is data presenting an opportunity? Is it a force for good? Is it a distraction? Is it frightening? Or frankly, just a pain, threat, and pain in the backside? Before I do that, I'm just going to give you a really simple kind of 60-second trailer on who we are as a business, starting with me, my favorite topic of conversation. I've been at Social Baker since 2013. I spent 2 years in between at Chorus, and I came back in January. As a business, we're just over 10 years old. We've got about 500 people, a few more offices than that now. Essentially, we're a social media tech business, if that makes sense. And ultimately, beyond the kind of conventional disciplines that we offer our clients in terms of publishing and so on, ultimately, it's really about informing brands to make smart decisions when it comes to both content creation and through to how to channel media budget effectively. And those are some of the themes we're going to touch on this afternoon. Just a very quick trailer again on some of the brands we work with. Lovely, shiny brands, all the big agency networks in pretty much every market around the world. The reason they partner with us, and this is important, is in the old days when people used to love talking about likes, shares, and comments, we all know that's arguably a little less relevant than it used to be. The reason why people work with us today is because we drive really nice results in accordance to the KPIs of today's social marketplace. So, mini trailer over. Let's just get back to the kind of the content of today. Is data and the growth of data, particularly in the world of social, does that present an opportunity? And yes, it presents a really, really good opportunity. The three opportunities I'm going to probably address are, one, how, evolving from likes, shares, and comments, we can really help, or rather, data can really help brands to drive not just actions, but actually sales. That's really, really important. I'm also going to talk, secondly, about how data can help you drive media efficiencies, CTR, CPC, so on. And then finally, Instagram stories is a topic we actually covered in one of our own sessions a month or two ago, is something most of our clients have, to say the least, a fascination with. So in a world of declining reach in Instagram stories because of their popularity, what we'd like to suggest is there's a way of protecting that reach by just interpreting and correlating some data points. So get your yawns out the way now. I'm just going to touch one slide about big data. We know there's a ton of it around in the ether at the moment. Interestingly, 15 years after the term big data was coined, hopefully finish your yawns now, the overwhelming majority of the data in the world today, almost all of it, has been created in the last 2 years. And that acceleration is showing no signs of abating. We're expecting to see a 4 times growth in data in the next 5 years alone. And there are probably 4 or 5 factors responsible for driving that growth. Internet penetration, adoption of devices, Internet of Things is obviously creating yet more data points. China has probably got a big say in this. And by no means, last not least, social platforms do. The traditional ones are still growing their user bases. There are new ones on the block. TikTok is obviously the elephant in the room. And when you put all these kind of factors together, it's creating a kind of a perfect storm for us as individuals to create more and more interactions on a daily basis. So at the moment, all of us in this room are probably creating about 1,400 interactions, data points on a daily basis. Fast forward to 2025, that's going to grow by 3.5 times. So, big data bit over. It's dizzying. To some people, it's frightening. For some people, they're leveraging really well. Amazon's a really good example of a business that leverages big data well. But if you just sometimes take a deep breath and sit down, take a step back and look at things from a high level, it's actually fairly easy to find, a really cool piece of actionable insight that you can deploy very quickly. So just a really simple example, we all know that Facebook's got the lion's share of the social audience today. And obviously combine that with Instagram, it's got almost all of it. We also might know that in terms of activity, there's all the kind of the platforms, and I know there are others that aren't on the slide, all the platforms are enjoying a really good, healthy level of activity volume. But if, from a marketing perspective, the brand opportunity, we feel, really sits within Instagram, at the moment anyway, just because that's where the highest density or proportion of engagement is happening now. So this is just This is an example of high-level aggregated data that can help people to navigate where to go next to inform their strategies. So, brands themselves, needless to say, are playing a big part in the data that's happening, not just at a global level, but certainly in the social platforms. If we just look at France, here's some data we ran for an event we ran in Paris a month or two ago. This is typically what a French brand does every day, week, month, year, and so on, across all the social channels. That's a lot of content, and this is at the higher end of the kind of extremities. 50 posts a day, thereabouts, seems like a ton. And from me as a consumer, that's just from one brand. I don't know how to make sense of that. If you think about your own social journeys throughout the day, across Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, Snap, or whatever, it's going to look a bit like this. There's going to be so much noise you're trying to absorb, it's actually very difficult to make any heady, even brand recall. And when we ask people, ask yourselves, can you remember the last 3 posts you saw today, yesterday, or ever? Some people may say yes, some people say no. We even ask our clients, what have you done in the last few weeks? Tell me about some of the individual pieces of content. What's worked? Sometimes they really struggle to answer that question. So if you think about what a brand, the challenges they have to engage with, there's data from the social platforms, there's data from the marketing tech that they have in the business, there's data from the agencies, and there's probably many more layers beyond that as well. So it's actually very difficult to find, pick your analogy, the needle in a haystack, the silver bullet, or the golden nugget. Thank you very much, Claude Monet. It's a really lovely picture, actually. So on initial glance, we at Social Bakers add a hell of a lot more data, but that's not the point. The point is, like any sensible marketing business or tech business, is to help you make sense of that data and drive down those CPCs, or drive those sales, or protect the reach, whatever it is the KPIs are after. And just at a very high level, again, the way that we go about this is to aggregate the data, make sense of it, factor in some AI, again, apologies, artificial intelligence, the machine learning, we know there's some slightly dirty words, and we just put it into really simple, easy-to-use platform, one that even me, who's not a data person at all, can find very easy to execute. And probably the simplest, and this is the only product shot, I promise you I've got within the set of slides, one of the most straightforward, black and white, easy to understand bits of insight we can offer is within our publisher, we have a scheduling piece that gives the brands the opportunity to optimize by time of day. And I know that's a slightly sort of mythical thing to tackle, but this is built on your own brand's data or insights from the page. And you can see here there's a perfect opportunity to add 13% more impressions just by publishing at that certain time of day. Now, we know AI is not flawless. There are endless cases where it kind of goes wrong. And, the person perspective, I use this device every day. I use Siri a lot. And a friend of mine called Holly, her daughter's called Alexa. So imagine the kind of complexities that causes. So every day, I go to Siri. Siri, set my alarm, please. Sorry, this is completely a red herring story, by the way. I go to the gym twice a week, which means I set my alarm for 6. And last Wednesday, I said, can I please set my alarm for 6? And Siri said, set alarm for sex. Sadly, a bit of an epic fail now on my part. So let's go script back to data, slight time out there. So I worked with our marketing team to put this content together. And I said, tell me some interesting stuff about how important do brands find marketing analytics or to help drive their decisions. And they said, there's a great number here, it's 32%. I said, 32%? It should be 90%, it should be 100% of marketers should place critical importance on data to help them drive their decisions and optimize their social. So I felt this was very low, and particularly in the context when I looked at some other numbers, which suggested that over 60% of marketers think they're doing a really good job, they're getting it right, they're telling the right stories, and I'm sure most of you amongst them are probably thinking, that's definitely not quite right. But when you think about actually how the audiences view this, over half think actually they are being spammed, it's irrelevant, it's not authentic, it's not this and it's not that. So the first opportunity I'm going to talk about is how by understanding what makes people tick, what is an authentic, meaningful piece of content, brand approach or whatever, that ultimately doesn't just drive those likes, shares, comments, retweets. It can actually lead to proper adding to the bottom line. And the way that we apply this is to apply a really important principle that social data and web data are not mutually exclusive. You should be interpreting these together to understand the behavioral patterns based on that journey. And again, just think about your own journeys throughout the day, in and out of social platforms, from search into news sites, into entertainment sites, lifestyle sites, and onwards. That builds up a really rich picture of the people you want to target. So this is a good example of how we do this. We build personas on a 30-day rolling basis based on brand engagement within Facebook and Google Analytics. And that leads to a much richer story, allowing you to tap into not just their journeys, but actually their passion points, right through to the perspective of, in this case, what are their media preferences too. Okay? So once you have the ingredients in your case, if you like, to do this, you can create the right content for the right persona based on much more current data, as I say, 30-day-old data at most. We've worked with a couple of e-commerce brands this year, one in luxury fashion, one in just in e-commerce, just mainstream fashion. And what they've seen by applying these insights, forget all the likes, shares, and comments that I've kind of referenced, this is driving proper numbers to the bottom line, increase of 50% sales in a couple of campaigns. So, with that in mind, with the ability to refine or fine-tune the content strategy you're putting out there, and we all know that right content, right time of day, et cetera, is an obvious, but again, so many people miss the boat. So many brands, 9 out of 10 in fact, are still applying a fairly uniform vanilla content strategy. Which, in other words, to explain what this means, there's quite a lot of copying and pasting going on in 2019. So what's going on here is you can see the overlap by platforms, and apologies if we've missed some platforms out. We've just run some quick analysis. It's probably a fairly obvious assumption, which is correct, that the biggest crossover is between Facebook and Instagram. Obviously, they're kind of more than bedfellows. They're under the same platform. But nonetheless, I would say that's essentially quite a lazy approach. We all know we go into Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and so on for different experiences, or Twitter. So that's kind of just the close on the first bit. The opportunity here to refine the content doesn't just lead to fluffy vanity metrics. It can add to the bottom line as well. So in the next part, just very quickly, I'll run through this a little bit more quickly. I'm going to talk about some equally transparent insight that can lead you to drive true media efficiencies. So in the world of social bakers, we do this in a super simplistic, really easy to interpret way. And what we do is, our advice is that brands, when it comes to promotional strategy, particularly in Facebook, is to wait and see. In other words, put your content out there, wait 2 hours, and within 2 hours, you're going to get a grade of between A or A+ to D. D being the lowest 50 percentile of the content's predicted performance, okay? Now, we did some analysis in 2018 just within the UK, and just looking at retail alone, £31 million was squandered in just in retail alone in a quarter on D quality content. If they'd followed, if some of these brands had social bakers or other platforms for that matter, and identified where to channel their media budget, in other words, spend on the right content, they would have seen much better results. So again, in the sort of spirit of transparency and how easy it is for us to use this, here's just examples of 3 posts. They've gone out, they've been promoted, they haven't been promoted yet. We're suggesting that those 2 on the right get promoted. And people might go, so what? We have a completely different approach in our brand. What's the opportunity? What can this mean for me? So again, having done some analysis on 1 million+ posts, you can categorically see the impact. This is the opportunity. I was going to say in black and white, but it's in green, yellow, orange, and whatever. You can categorically see the impact and the opportunity of driving up click-through rates and driving down CPC. That's what happens if you bet on the right content and invest wisely, so to speak. And going just one step further, once you started to optimize along these kind of lines, then what you can do is just look at our global benchmarks. What is, for example, the average CPC in retail? Optimize towards that point and you can even start to outperform it as well. So, just the last couple of slides, I'm going to talk a little bit about Instagram stories. Again, exponential rise in adoption by users, huge growth over the last couple of years, and needless to say, that's cascaded into the environment of brands. The following suit, they've started to really shift the balance of how stories are deployed in relation to feed posts. And with that, predictably comes two things. One, an increase in investment in Instagram stories, and equally, perhaps less predictably, but probably not surprisingly, there's been a little bit of diminishing in the reach of those stories as well. So we feel, having done a lot of research into this, that there is an opportunity to do some investigation, interpret some data points, spot some correlations that can at the very least protect the reach of your stories. So those might be some clues here. There might be the attention. So that's effectively, that equates to exit rates within your Instagram stories. It's engagement, it's taps back or taps forward equally, and it's relationship. Sometimes we see some really successful content that is trying to drive a dialogue, not just have comments and replies, but really drive a dialogue and get people to drive to perhaps some different actions. And again, with the high-level aggregated data that we have at our fingertips, we can help brands understand how do you perform in Instagram stories, in your vertical, across reach, or exit rates, replies, taps back, or completion rates. In the good old days when I worked at AOL, we would talk about dwell time. That's exactly what that kind of completion rate means within Instagram stories. And again, just overlaying some high-level data, does your brand fit into one of these verticals with low exit rates, or if you need to go back to kind of the classroom and optimize to perhaps get out to where you're having high exit rates? This is where some work needs to be done. And I think some of the other things we've done is to spot some correlation with creative, adoption of video, and in this case, we're starting to see that when brands are starting to use video more effectively in their stories, we're seeing even lower exit rates. So you'll be glad to hear that's my part done. I'm just going to sum up very quickly, and just to recap on what I said at the beginning, there are multiple opportunities in social and other digital marketing within data. We probably all know that. I think sometimes it's harder to harness it. But I'd say in the first point, I said how by refining content and by applying data, more importantly, it can lead to not just fluffy vanity metrics. It's about driving business impact, conversions, and sales. Media efficiencies it's not critical for all brands. We know that some brands will just have a fairly casual but deep pockets approach to social. But other brands don't have that luxury. They need to be more wise. They need to be informed where they channel that budget. And then finally, with a huge adoption of Instagram stories, both from users like me and brands, reach is arguably in decline. So there are just some clever tricks you can apply to make sure you mitigate that decline. So look, we're here all day and tomorrow. If you want to just have any casual conversations, we're out there. I think some of the guys will be propping up the bar later, so come and talk to us. But thank you very much.